Thank you for your patience this morning as well.
No problem.
But just tell the audience a bit about your background and what it is that you do.
So my background is a bit varied. I mean, I usually when I introduce myself, I always start off with the fact that I'm a mom. I don't know why moms do this, but I'm a mom, and that's such a huge part of my life. So I have three sons, Skylar, Micah, and Michael. I'm a caregiver to my senior mother, and when my father was living, I was a caregiver to him. But then professionally, I'm an advocate, and so currently I work at the Women's Resource Center as the executive director. But for the last 10 years, I've been deeply involved in advocacy across the spectrum of issues, whether that be organizing, demonstrations to show dissatisfaction in certain government or legislative decisions, whether that be simply raising awareness through my social media presence on issues that are impacting the everyday Bermudian, or in the past, in previous elections, I would kind of do a bit of political commentary just to make sure that the information is available and digestible for my generation. And so I'm an advocate at heart. I believe that my calling is to serve. And so I serve in various different capacities. That could look like being the PTA president, sitting on the Bermuda Arts Council, or leading the Women's Resource Center. Whatever I do, I just seek to serve and make my community better.
You've decided to throw your head in. So that brings us to, what inspired you to take that step to throw your name in the political ring, and how important is your brother's legacy, the late Sean Crockwell, to what you decided to do?
Yeah, so this question, I've been asked this question so much over the last month. And I wanted to get involved in 2015, I wanted to get involved in politics. Full transparency, I had joined the OBA when it was formed. My brother was a founding member, and so I had joined the OBA. I wanted to get involved, but it just wasn't meshing, with me. And my brother and I, we actually butt heads pretty hard over that, and it all came to a head with the Pathways to Status protest, and many people will recall in one of his speeches in the House of Assembly, he referenced that I was up there protesting every day. And so through that experience, I said, you know what, I need to pause, because I don't want to get involved in politics under any party and then find my values compromised. And also my children were much younger. So I just said, now's not the time. And then, of course, Sean resigned as a cabinet minister, and then later resigned as a member of the One Bermuda Alliance, and sat in the House as an independent until his passing. And for me, that was so powerful, because what I learned from my brother, from his political experience, is that he really wanted to create change within our system. And he felt that by getting involved, within the system that he wanted to change, or within the party, maybe it could create change. And that's why he left the UBP and formed the BDA, and then merged the UBP and the BDA with the OBA, because what he was really trying to do was find a way to shift the energy of our political landscape. And unfortunately, he wasn't successful. And so having that experience, having that front row seat to what he went through, because people don't know what he went through behind the scenes. They just see, what was in the newspaper and all of that. But as his sister, I saw the other side of things. And so as time went on and I started to think about getting involved in politics again, I knew that it could never be under a party. I just knew that it couldn't. And many years ago, in 2015, I met with Stuart Hayward. He was still living at that time, and he's the only independent to get elected under our current parliamentary system in 1989. And so I sought him out and I met with him, and I said, listen, I want to get involved in politics. I want to do it as an independent. How did you win? And it's so interesting what he told me. He said, do you really want to be a politician, or do you want to be an advocate? And I had to stop and think. And he says, if you want to make a difference, there's so many ways to do that outside of the legislature. And he encouraged me to take the things that I'm passionate about and advocate for them. And if it led me to Parliament, let it lead me there. But he said, don't let Parliament be your goal. Let change be your goal. And that stayed with me. And so, I continued my advocacy work. But the state of our political landscape right now is
Mhm.
such where we really need change.
Mhm.
And it's not going to come from our current status quo. It's not going to come from the leadership of our current parties, because they don't want the same change that we want. And
Mhm.
it's two different changes. Some people just want to change in government. They don't like the current government. They're
Mhm.
not happy with the current government, and they want a change in government.
Mhm.
And I get that. I want the same thing. And then there are other people who actually want to see a systemic change.
Mhm.
And so those of us who want to see a systemic change, we kind of have to break outside of the current system
Mhm.
to influence that change.
To take it a step further, as independent and being formerly, party affiliated, how do you see yourself navigating Bermuda's political landscape differently than, party affiliates?
So I'm actually really excited about what independent representation can look like. And so for me, I'm running in C31. I live in C31. I think that's important. I think the fact that I live where I'm running is a benefit. It's an advantage, because not only do I know the people, but I know the issues in our neighborhood. And I think that that's something that independent candidates can bring if we run where we live. It brings an added layer of connection to the community. And what I really want to do is have my representation be influenced from the ground up. So should I be elected, I wouldn't, have any party loyalty. My loyalty would be to my constituents. And so in order to represent them adequately, I need to know what they think about the things that we're going to be debating, the policies, the legislation. And so my intention is to establish a C31 advisory council or committee. As I've been canvassing, we have medical professionals, real estate professionals, former educators, we have developers, we have every expertise that we need within Constituency 31. And so I can draw on all of that expertise, all of that experience, all of that knowledge, and then use that to guide how I show up in Parliament. And I actually think that that will be revolutionary for our system, because right now that doesn't happen.
Mhm.
And I say this respectfully. Yes, we have amazing politicians who have really connected with their communities, but is that connection actually influencing legislation?
Mhm.
That's my question.
Mhm.
I intend, and I've been sharing this in my town halls, on the doorsteps, in my one-on-ones with constituents. I intend, and I've already begun the process, to establish a community newsletter. And I will be sending out correspondence to advise what we're going to be discussing in Parliament, what bills are scheduled for debate, so that they can provide feedback. And, I don't know, I've always lived in C31, so this has never happened in
Mhm.
my constituency before. I've never had my representatives say, what do you think about this proposed legislation? So I'm going to assume, and it's an assumption, that it doesn't happen anywhere else.
What have you been hearing, like on the doorstep, talking to constituents? What are their concerns that you think you can tackle?
So on the doorsteps, of course, we have all the same national concerns, and so I won't spend too much time talking about that. But the roads are a huge issue for Constituency 31. There are areas of our roads that are not safe for pedestrians, young children who catch the bus up in Granaway Heights. There's no crosswalk, so that's quite dangerous. There's areas where there isn't proper drainage. So when it rains, you have people standing on walls when they're at the bus stop. Like, it's drama up in C31. And what I do know is that I have very active constituents. They will call their representative. And so they have told me, listen, I've been calling successive representatives. Someone even told me, listen, I called your brother about this, because he was the representative for C31 as well. And so these issues they're not new. The constituents have been asking for certain things, as simple as a mirror at the bottom of the hill of Granaway Heights, and
Mhm.
those things haven't been done. And
Mhm.
so that's their concern. Their concern is like, hey, we elected you to represent us, and you're not even acting on these small things. Right. But in addition to that, everyone is concerned about the cost of living. There isn't a house that is not impacted
Mhm.
by the cost of living.
Mhm.
And so people want to know, how are we going to progress in this area. And also, people are concerned about education. That's a recurrent theme. People like myself don't even know where their child is going to go in September.
You mentioned cost of living, education on a national level, but where do you believe the PLP went wrong in governing Bermuda? And if successful as an independent candidate, what do you believe you can do in your capacity to fix things?
So I believe not just the PLP, but the OBA as well, they have gone wrong when it came to transparency. I work in nonprofit, and so everything that I do, every dollar that we receive, we have to justify where it came from, what it's going towards. And we have to justify the data for our decision making behind the programs and services that we provide. And the government no government has offered us that same level of transparency relating to why and how they came to these decisions. And that has to do with our system. They don't have to offer us any transparency. They don't have to. What are we going to do? We're going to protest. What are we going to do? But with independent representatives, there isn't a party to fall under or to be, buffered by. If the people are not happy with our representation, they can absolutely just vote us out at the next election. They can call me up and say, hey, this is not what I voted for you to do. And I think that one piece, that transparency piece, connects to so many of our issues. There has been fiscal mismanagement, which is directly connected to our cost of living and our increasing debt. There has been lack of transparency regarding the process in our education reform. We've even had instances where the minister has been heard to say, we're not giving them the data because we don't want them to challenge it. And that's a problem for me. That is a problem for me, and that is a problem for many of the residents in this country, because you're representing us. How dare you not justify why you're doing what you're doing?
I'm going to read a comment. Rhonda Johnson, she says, I support to teach people what's available opposed to reinventing the wheel. I don't want my representatives spoon feeding me. The order information about the House Assembly is online. First, while I appreciate what she's saying, everybody doesn't have that time, number one.
Absolutely.
Number two, as a person who religiously used to listen to the House of Assembly, it's not good on my ears.
Can I just quickly
go ahead.
Let's address that one point. Yes, the information is accessible, but like Jamel said, not everyone has the time. But also, the missing piece is the communication between the constituent and the representative. The constituents can go online and look at whatever they want to look at, but is there a vehicle in place where they can communicate how they feel about that to their representative and have assurance that that is going to be taken into consideration when their representative goes to Parliament? And also, regarding the quality of the debate in the House, that has declined significantly. And when you have such a huge majority, 29-7, really what are they debating? The legislation is going to get passed. What are they debating?
Exactly. And I agree with Teray here as well. The HOA is an air bleed to listen to. One is suggestion may increase quality of debate. And I think I agree, Teray. Excellent response. I'm just asking, if you're elected, would you research and or support change in our constitution, or even how do you feel about independence?
Okay. Absolutely. I do believe that we need some constitutional change, especially if we're going to change our parliamentary system, that, we would have to change our constitution for long-term systemic change. How do I feel about independence? So my first natural response is I would love for Bermuda to be independent. As a lover of this country, I would love that. However, I'm going to be really honest and say that, one, I need to do more research, and I would need to have confidence that our economy and our social structure will not collapse as a result of independence. So the short answer is yes, I support it. However, it needs to be done correctly at the right time, and it needs to be able to benefit the people.
And that brings the question, because I believe it might have been in the One Bermuda Alliance platform leading up to the 2012 election, about the right to recall. And I think that would be perfect. What are your thoughts on the right to recall?
Absolutely. Please. Yes. The right to recall is so important. And that would strengthen our democracy so much. And that would also provide like an extra layer of checks and balances for voters, right? As we know right now, we're going to vote on February 18th. And the representative could do whatever they want after that. Really, they could be a great representative or not, and there isn't anything constitutionally that the electorate can do about that. They have to wait until the next election.
Yeah.
And so I absolutely would support the right to recall.